read her bio. Tracy O'Rourke is a master black belt with 15 years of experience with operational excellence methodologies. Tracy has helped hundreds of organizations launch, implement, and sustain process improvement initiatives. Tracy advises companies and spearheads implementation on many aspects of process improvement, including strategic planning, training, implementation, mentoring, project selection, and project counseling. Tracy earned an MBA with an emphasis in leadership and managing organizational change from the Graziano School of Business at Pepperdine University and a bachelor's degree in English literature from San Francisco State University. Tracy loves to participate in 10K running and to spend time with her husband and 2 boys. So, let's give a warm Washington State welcome to Tracy.
Hey everybody, how are you doing today? Woohoo! So, what I do, I'm a consultant obviously, and I travel all over the country, going to different places, talking to different people, and people will say, well, what have you been up to? Where have you been working? I go, well, I've been spending a lot of time up in Washington, helping government up there. Really? What's going on up there? It's a hotbed. What are they doing? It just seems to be a lot of stuff going on up there. So, I'm really happy to be part of this effort. You guys really are making a difference up here. And, you know, if you think about the national stories going on about government, it doesn't paint the greatest picture, does it? But how do you change people's thinking? It starts with telling positive stories about government. And I'm seeing a lot of really good stories here in Washington to tell about government. So Washingtonians, all of you that work in government, are really going to change the way people think about government. So you guys got to give yourself that. When people say stuff about government, they're not going to roll their eyes anymore because you guys are making a difference. So today we're going to talk about the critical questions that every organization needs to answer. These questions really are around enterprise alignment and lean culture. And these are some of the things we're going to be talking about today. So what are the 6 critical questions? Why are they critical to answer? How is this going to help you on your lean journey? And what activities and tools will help you answer those questions? So before we dive into that, I want to get a sense of how long you guys have been on the lean journey. So quick poll, and this doesn't just help me, I think this helps everyone too, here. So, raise your hand if you're an organization still wondering if lean is still a good idea, or you've been doing it only for about a year. Raise your hand high. All right, good. Okay, how about if you've been on this journey 1 to 4 years? Raise your hand. Good, a lot more hands there. And how about over 4 years? Anyone? Okay, these are the leaders right here. Keep your hands raised. Good job. Thanks, that gives us a sense of how long you've been on this journey. And most of you are just getting started with lean. And hopefully in today's session, you're going to learn how to reduce waste on your lean journey. Right? Less rework, less restarting. So hopefully these questions will help you with some of that. So why is there a movement around embracing lean or a continuous improvement culture in government? What are some of the reasons? It could be budgets are getting tight, right? It could be that customers are frustrated. It could be that customers or employees are victims of processes that look like this. Right? This process is painful. It's painful for customers. It could be painful for employees. Remember that video Paul Anker showed us this morning? He showed us a lot of videos, but that was awesome stuff. Remember when the car flipped over? He said, this is what we do to our customers all the time. And it's true. So when you look at this picture, when you think about process design, what comes to mind? You are right. I'll tell you what she said in just a moment, because that's kind of the point. these processes remind you of a process that you worked in, or that you currently work in, or that maybe you inherited? Like, who did this, right? So I guess that is the next question. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it that this process looks like this? Everyone and no one, right? Who are we going to blame? Who's responsible? Rather than focus on the search for the guilty, we want to focus on the process. It's not the people. We tend to focus on the people doing the process. The people that have to work in the process, to your point, they're the biggest victims, right? They got to put up with this every day that they're in this process, and that is painful. So, maybe some of you may have had this position, right? How many of you have sat at a bottleneck that looked like this? And what happens? People go, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do your job? Can't you just deliver the information? You're like, but, if you put a person in a bad process, who's going to win? The person or the process? The process. The process will win. A bad process beats a good person every time. And that's frustrating. It's a frustrating place to be, right? So we don't want that. We do not want people stuck doing processes like this. Deming says 90% of the problem is the process and management. But it's not the people that do the process. Only 10% of the time it's the people that do the process. But we often view it the opposite. We often view it that it's the person in the process 90% of the time, and it's only the process 10% of the time. So we do tend to blame people. We tend to do the search for the guilty. So we want to grant people immunity when we look at processes. It's not about the people, it's about the process. How do we focus on the process? Ken Miller uses an analogy in his book, We Don't Make Widgets. And the work of government is noble, the people of government are amazing, and the systems of government are a mess. And so really, what we're trying to do is really focus on the process. How do we fix the processes? I think this is why government workers get blamed so much sometimes. The processes and systems have a lot of bottlenecks, and people blame government employees. What's wrong with those people? And that's not the case at all. It's the systems and the processes. So this is one reason why organizations are embarking on a lean journey. Straighten out government pipes. Not the people, the pipes. So, for those of you that are leaders, when you see things like this, what do you want to do? Well, you want to fix it, because guess what? Bold leaders are not meant to maintain the status quo. Leaders see opportunities and challenges, and they want to make a difference. They want to reach for operational excellence. And for many leaders, lean is like the holy grail of operational excellence. Many leaders bring lean into their organization to help transform the organization. And as a transformational leader, you bestow upon your people powerful instruments of lean, like value stream maps and Kanban, and you even give people the authority to manifest process walks and Kaizen events. And they're armed with fresh eyes, right? They can see waste and problems with flow. But you might be saying to yourself, if you're the leader, well, we have the Holy Grail, but why is the culture not transforming? What's going on? Where is the magic witnessed in the land of operational excellence? You want to believe that lean is the answer, but you haven't seen the magic take hold quite yet. And maybe you've seen some sparks. And maybe some of you have seen a lot, and that's great. We want to move forward. But what we really want to do is we want to help agencies in Washington unlock the full potential of lean. How do we do that? Why? If it's not working, sometimes it's how it's implemented. Or maybe it's not working as good as you thought. And sometimes it's the approach. So one common approach that we see in organizations is that they train a bunch of experts or a group of people to solve all the problems. And these so-called experts will then try to deploy improvement throughout the organization. How many of you, never mind. So there are two main problems with this. There's two main problems with this. First of all, and again, it's nothing about the people. A lot of times it's how it's organized. But a lot of times these experts want to try to solve problems, right? I'm going to go in there and help solve the problem. So they go down to an area and they say, I'm going to help solve this problem. Get out of here. Let me look at your process. And they try to fix it. And the person that does the process is just standing there on the sidelines going, what is this person doing? Right? So they try to fix other people's processes. People don't like that. So with this kind of approach, workers often feel like lean is being done to them, not with them. So that's the danger of this kind of an arrangement is sometimes the people that are doing the process get left out. I actually had this situation happen in LA County. An agency called me there and they said, you know what, we're having problems with our program, we're not really sure why it's not working, you should come down and take a look at it. So I went and I did a lot of interviews. I did a lot of interviews with leadership and the groups and the departments, and ultimately that's what was the problem. That was one of the main root causes is people felt like lean was being done to them, not with them. They didn't want these people in there. They didn't like it. They didn't really feel like it was a part of them. They felt like they were forced to do it. And it wasn't their solutions being implemented. So that's the first problem with this. The second problem is, starting with training, when you actually train people right away on the tools, it actually causes organizations to false start. So you train people, and there's not a whole lot of guidance on where to apply the tools, how to apply the tools. There's no direction many times. It's like giving all your employees a hammer. And now they're going to start to look for those nails. I said you start banging on all these things and you know, once you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So they just start banging on everything, and you know, and then the leader has to calm them all down and take the hammer back and bonk them on the head. No, not like that, not over there. So, you know, they get a little frustrated, right? And so now, it's like they've lost something. A few things. They've lost momentum now, right? They've lost some of the excitement and a little bit of motivation to try something new because they've been given tools without a framework or a guideline. So we've done some damage probably not just to the hammers, but, you know, to our effort, to our improvement program. So, in order to step back and take a more holistic approach, we're going to talk about the model, the Shingo model. And it can be a really good framework to start to look at your program. So this whole conference has been about the Shingo model, so I'm sure this isn't the first time you've seen it, but these are the 4 dimensions of the Shingo model. And this is for operational excellence. It's got 4 dimensions. It's got your customer focus, your enterprise alignment, continuous improvement, and the cultural enablers. And this is a great model to start looking at holistically, what are you doing for your lean implementation. So here's another reason why organizations sometimes don't see a culture change. We often find that people or organizations are only focusing on one of these dimensions. Which one do you think it is? Many times it's continuous improvement. All their efforts are around continuous improvement projects, or Kaizen events, or activities, process walks. So a lot of focus there, getting training, get your people trained, and not a lot of focus on any of the other dimensions. So in order to unlock all the power of lean, you really need to focus on all of the dimensions. It's not just about tools, and I think you guys have been hearing that a lot at this conference. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in today's session talking about all of these dimensions, but these are basically what they're about. Creating value for the customer, having some purpose and direction in enterprise alignment, obviously focusing on tools and the process for continuous improvement, and finally cultural enablers, which is working on the culture. How do we develop a culture that lean works in? So each of these dimensions supports the others and is built upon the others. And in order to achieve that real sustained culture, incorporating all four is best. So here's something that you could do right away if you wanted. You can go back to the ranch and try this. This is something that we have done and worked with clients on building, but this is something you can also do on your own. You can try it on your own if you like to. If you want to take a stab at a holistic approach or get it started. This is an 18-month timeline created by FBOD, or Financial Business Operations Division in King County. This is, it shows you the dimensions on the left, on the first column, and then there's a timeline for 18 months. So what they've done is their leadership team, the broader leadership team, has brainstormed what they're going to do for the next 18 months to actually support some of these dimensions. What are we going to do about enterprise alignment? What are some of these cultural enablers we should be thinking about? What are we going to be doing for continuous improvement? So, of course, this is the output. And there's some pre-work involved in terms of identifying the right people, assessing current state, where are you today, what's not working, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses, and then brainstorming and filtering before you can put it on the timeline. But this is a picture of the output, and they've got it hanging on their walls. And it helps provide clear direction, and ultimately, it's really getting the leadership team to agree on paying attention to these things and getting it on their calendar too, which sometimes is the hardest thing, is getting it on the calendar. So what we're going to be talking about today is really just one of these rows. We're going to be talking really about enterprise alignment row. So why are we only talking about enterprise alignment? Well, we only got an hour. Actually, we've only got 45 minutes. And the other thing is, it's really important in terms of starting a lean culture. It helps you, enterprise alignment helps you with false starts, avoiding false starts. And it does provide a lot of inputs into the other three dimensions. So that's why we're starting with this. So why is enterprise alignment important? Well, picture this. If you're driving in your car, picture yourself driving in your car along a highway on a clear day. And suddenly, you round a curve and come upon this. What do? You slow down. You turn on your lights, maybe. Why? You can't see. You can't see in front of you. You got low visibility. You're not sure what's coming up or how the road might turn. You proceed with caution, and therefore you lose some momentum. This is also how employees feel. Without clear vision, goals, and plans, employees are operating in a fog. They can't see what's up ahead. They slow down. They're unsure about the road that lies ahead of them. Momentum and energy is lost because they begin to question the path forward. Unfortunately, some employees have been operating in a fog for a long time. And eventually they become desensitized, and they're operating in that kind of environment, they disengage. So let's go back to you driving in your car. What do you do when the fog clears? You speed up. You can see the road ahead. You know what's coming, and you can plan on how you will handle the road. And this is what happens when leaders create a strategy and communicate it. It lifts the fog for employees. Less time and energy is wasted on uncertainty. Employees see the vision, and they see themselves in it. So how do we lift the fog for employees with enterprise alignment? So there's a lot of names for this kind of work. There's enterprise alignment, strategic deployment, strategic planning, strategy management. It's not important what you call it, just that you do it. There's also a Japanese name for this process. It's called Hoshin Kanri. It's a planning system developed in the 50s by a professor named Kaoru Nishikawa. He also created the fishbone diagram. But the Japanese term Hoshin it stands for compass or needle. It's direction. Kanri means management or control. So that's really what you're doing when you're doing Hoshin Kanri or enterprise alignment. It is twofold. It's long-range key objectives. What are we going to do? What are some of the things we really need to focus on for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of breakthroughs? But it also focuses on the day-to-day. What are some of the things? We got to keep the ranch running. We can't just focus on breakthroughs. We got to focus on the day-to-day. And there's a lot of stuff in the day-to-day that it needs improvement to. So how do we do that? How do we make sure we're hitting both the high-level, long-term, and the day-to-day? That's what Hoshin Kanri focuses on. So whatever you call it, it's usually these things. You're usually doing things like developing a vision, a mission. You're creating organizational values, outcomes, goals, initiatives. There's a lot of stuff on here. A lot of stuff. And all of this ideally should be done before training your frontline workers so that they see the big picture. You ever get that question? So why are we doing lean? I'm not really sure why. What's the big picture here? Alignment. That's the opportunity there. So it's a lot to remember, I know. So we're going to give you 6 questions, just 6. Those are the 6 questions you want to focus on to answer. And if you answer those 6, you've done this work. So here's the 6 questions. Who are we? Where are we going? Right? So making sure we focus on those things. It sounds kind of dumb. Who are we? But you'd be surprised. Sometimes we tend to lose sight of the road, even as an organization. You'd be surprised how many calls I get. People say, we don't really know our core processes. It happens. So who are we? Where are we going? How do we measure what's important? How are we doing against those measures? How do we decide where to focus? What actions should we be taking to improve our ability to achieve those outcomes? And most importantly, how do we sustain improvement? Because that's what we struggle with too. So we're going to answer some of these questions in the next 40 minutes or so. So the first question is, who are we and where are we going as an organization? It involves developing a vision, a mission, outcomes, goals, and initiatives. And, again, think about that fog patch. How do we create better visibility? The first step is true north. What is the true purpose of the organization? So again, like we said, many times we can get lost along the way. So we have to develop a vision. And it's not something that just hangs in a hallway gathering dust that nobody buys into. It's something employees feel. They're inspired by it. A shared vision that inspires people. And vision typically answers the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's the vision. What do you want to be when you grow up? What are we trying to be? What do we want to be? That can be really inspirational and fun to put together with your staff. A mission statement is different. It answers 3 questions. What do we do? How do we do it? And for whom do we do it? So that's what typically a mission statement will do. Some of this purpose work is also about values, organizational values. Values, some people go, how can an organization have values? Well, just like personal values, organizational values help create an identity for your employees, an identity that they can really connect with. One of my clients came to me and said, our organization, we don't have any identity, we don't have any DNA. What's our DNA? Who are we? What is our DNA? So organizational values do help people connect with their organization. Working in government has an identity in general, right? You guys want to make a difference. We're not here to make $1 million. People in government are mission-driven, not profit-driven. So how do we leverage that? How do we breathe life into our organizational values simply with that? How many of you are familiar with Southwest Airlines? Okay, I'm a fan. I love Southwest Airlines. I fly them all the time. I think they do a great job with values too. When you think about Southwest Airlines, what kind of a company is that? What describes their values? Cheap, affordable, right? What if you work there? Fun, right? So here are some of their values. We operate with a warrior spirit, a servant's heart, and a fun, loving attitude. So if you had to visualize a picture that would incorporate these values, what might that look like? How about this? Okay, warrior spirit. They got war paint on their chests. They're showing their chests. That's kind of warrior-like. The sign, I carry free bags. That's pretty servant-hearted, right? And, okay, fun-loving. Okay, if you weren't fun-loving, would you be able to take this picture? Right? So, they really embody their values in this picture. How many of you have a picture like this with some of your coworkers? Anybody? Never mind HR. Okay.
Photo.
Okay, so they obviously have an identity. So we're obviously here at a Lean Conference. Let's look at Toyota. So here's some values for Toyota. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but each employee breathes these values. Each employee, they live these values completely. There's a strong interest in Toyota operations. Obviously, they've done a lot in Lean, and they founded Lean. And there's so much interest in how they do this that they offer tours. Anybody been on a tour before? Awesome. Not very many. We should all go. Let's do the conference there next year. So there's a lot of interest, and even their competitors can come in and take a look at how the Toyota plant and see how Lean is implemented. They can see how the Kanbans work and the pull systems and the Poka-yoke in action. But you may wonder, well, why does Toyota do that? Why do they let their competitors in? Why do they let anyone come in just to see how they implement the tools? Well, even their competitors, what? They're going to lose their competitive edge if they do that, right? Well, Toyota still has a competitive edge. Toyota knows that the key to successful Lean implementation or transformation is culture. And culture can't be copied. Culture can't be copied. Why can't it be copied? Lots of reasons. One reason why culture can't be copied is because it's a reflection of leadership behaviors. And leadership behaviors are different for every organization. Organizational leaders define what will happen in an organization and what will not happen. Leaders make the rules. Leaders decide what is and is not important and what employees will pay attention to. The thinking and the beliefs of an organization are created by the leaders. The emotional climate, the kinds of control and empowerment that employees have, the unity and the connectedness, all driven by leadership. Leaders also establish what is tolerated in an organization, how people treat each other, how people behave, what is acceptable and what people can get away with. In the end, what manifests in culture is what leaders create and tolerate. Leaders enforce policy and procedure, but they also enforce the unwritten rules. So employees come to know what is allowed and tolerated. So what is tolerated in your organization? So I had a client, they hired a black belt, and the hiring manager was very excited about this black belt. came on board and started working with people, and he didn't seem to be a fit. Exactly. He was a bit abrasive for the culture, but there were a couple other issues that came up, and he had to go to sexual harassment training. People started to complain more and more and more, and the hiring manager basically said, yeah, I know he has some issues, but he's really smart. So what's the message here? That having smart people is more important than having a healthy organization. So what are we allowing to happen in our organizations? And more importantly, if we want a lean culture, is that kind of behavior part of a lean culture? Disrespect is not part of lean culture. So leaders affect culture. Whatever the culture is today, leaders gotta own it. So a couple questions. First of all, does your organization have values? And if so, do employees breathe the values? And do leaders enforce the values? Because if respect or teamwork is part of your values, are we allowing people to not be a team player? Are we allowing people to disrespect others? So, Southwest, I'll just say this. Southwest Airlines, many of you have probably flown on Southwest Airlines. They do funny things because they're a fun-loving environment. When they do announcements, they'll say funny things like, okay, if you're enjoying your drink, you need to stop enjoying it and start drinking it because we're going to land and we're taking that cup, right? Or they say just funny things like that. One of these events caused a customer to complain to Herb Keller, President and CEO at the time. And he was saying that the customer was basically saying, well, it was really unprofessional and offensive. And Herb Keller said, okay, I'll write the customer, I'll let him know. And he wrote, we'll miss you. So the point behind this story is we as leaders, we need to commit to the values and defend them. And when we see people in the organization not following the values, we should do something. So there's a quote from a book. It's called Boundaries for Leaders by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's a pretty new book. I love this book. Very good, highly recommended. Boundaries for Leaders right there. I see some people writing it down. This quote was in that book. It was about a leader. And he said, when I started my organization, nobody told me that half of my energy would be spent building it, and the other half would be spent protecting and defending it against all the things other people wanted it to be. So we need to do that as leaders. We should look at what we allow to happen, especially if we're trying to build lean culture. We decide we should look at what should not be tolerated anymore. So values is an important piece of the work, and they shouldn't just be on the wall, and nobody pays attention to them. So we've got our vision, we've got our mission, we've got our values. How do we achieve the vision? So this is when we talk about our outcomes, our goals, our breakthrough objectives. All of these things are things that we're doing to align the organization. And this is obviously important work, and we have something we call a clarity map, because it has this information on it, and it helps lift the fog for employees. It's one page. You can follow the format if you like. It has our vision, the company or the organization's vision, mission, values. Here's our goals or outcomes that we want, some of the strategic success measures that we have. One page, cleaned out, right? And you can share this with anybody you want. It's one page. It's something that people can have. We're doing some work with the city of SeaTac to do the clarity map. And this is their first draft of the clarity map. These were some of the elements that their leadership team developed. They said I could share this. Thank you very much. And the leadership team at the City of SeaTac worked really hard on this and really made it their own. They really spent the amount of time needed to develop something, to involve people in the organization to develop it. And this was the final product. It was shared, communicated throughout the organization to City Council and beyond. And they're proud of it. Doesn't it look nice? So one of the directors saw it and he said, hey, it doesn't really show the work that went into it, the agony, they're not going to see that. It's so simple. And he's right. They worked hard on it. And part of it, one of the reasons why is because of this. The essence of strategies is sometimes choosing what not to do. I mean, how many of you feel like you got a lot on your plate? Right? Always. There's always a lot on our plate. And sometimes we got to figure out what we are not going to do. And that's part of strategy. And your employees will love you for it. Because if you just say 5 things, just 5 things, that's what we're going to try to accomplish, they will hug you. They will love that. So how do we get that focused on what we want to accomplish as an organization? And here's how you do it. So this is a very simple tool. Maybe some of you have used this already. It's what I call a very simple change management tool. It's called the Stop, Start, Continue. How many of you have heard of this before? A few people. Okay. So now we usually do this as part of the work. Now that you've got your mission, your vision, your values, your outcomes, your initiatives, what are you going to stop doing? What are you going to stop doing? What is not aligned with those goals? Take it off your calendar. Get it off your plate, because that is not the focus this year. So really taking the time to say, no, we will not focus on this. And now that you've got the goals, what are you going to start doing that you're not doing today? And stopping, by the way, also includes what are you going to stop tolerating? That should be in there as well. But what are you going to stop doing? What are you going to start doing? And what will you continue to do? So this is when you're saying, hey, whatever we did here in terms of, this function or this group, they're doing great. They're all energized. What are they doing over there? How do we continue to do that with everybody else? What is it that's working over there that we need to start continuing with everybody else more? So this is about, identifying specifically what to do. It's a great tool. It's simple, and I use it all the time. So that's question 1. These are going to go a little quicker. So number 2 is, how do we measure what's important? What does success look like? How do you know you had a good day? I don't know. If my boss doesn't tell me it's a good day, I didn't screw up, that's a good day. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes people don't know if they're on track. They don't know if they're going to actually, they don't know what success looks like. So this is about giving them a measurement. So here's an example of a graph. And this is, again, we've got the clarity map, and we've got the things we want to measure at the top of the organization. And what I really love about the opening speech yesterday, Sarah from Virginia Mason, she walked through this process. I was like, oh my God, there it is. She's showing us exactly how they did it. They were cascading metrics all through the organization, and that's really what this is doing. It's showing you start at the top, and how do you cascade those through the organization down to the individual. And it's about communication and metrics. So when you've got your measures at the strategic level, you can cascade them down into the tactical level. I'm going to show you 3 tools that'll do that. But it's also important to play catchball. Catchball helps engage employees in open communication. Somebody asked me, what's catchball? Catchball is, just remember, you ever hear that saying, well, the ball's in your court? So catchball is throwing the ball out to your employees. The ball's in their court. You want open communication with your employees, and they visualize like you're playing catch with your employees. Catchball. So when you throw it out, you're waiting for them to respond, or a vehicle to get their feedback. That's what they call catchball. How do we make sure we're using this information with our employees? So here's an example of what a scorecard might look like at the top line. This is just a very small sample of one, of what leaders can use at the top line. And then we start to build dashboards throughout the organization. But before you can do a dashboard any deeper, you've got to know your core processes. You do not want to do a dashboard necessarily by department. You want want to do it by process. So you have to know what your core processes are first. So this is what we call core process mapping, or what are the value streams. Understand your value streams. Value stream, obviously the stream of work that provides value to the customer. What are your core processes that deliver to the customer? Not your departmental processes, not your functional processes, your core processes. Core processes touch the customer. What are they? Map those first. Once you do that, define who your customers are and who your stakeholders are by process. Customers and stakeholders are very different, and these are the definitions we use. Customers are users of the process. They receive something out of the process, or they pay for something. Stakeholders do not receive anything out of the process, but they have a vested interest in how the process performs. Stakeholders and customers are different. It's important to identify both. I find in government, not everywhere, but many places, I see people caring about the stakeholder and not the customer. They care about the policy interest, but they're not really focused so much on the customer. And sometimes they confuse the two. So it's really important to understand both of these, because what we find is they have very different requirements. And you have to satisfy both in government. You can't just satisfy the customer. You've got to satisfy both, but you got to know who they are. So there's a lot of confusion I see many times in government between who is the customer and who is the stakeholder. I actually was working with someone, and I can clearly see that he was really serving the stakeholder, and I was trying to get him to see that he wasn't serving the customer. And so he finally got there. Yeah, okay, you're right. We serve the stakeholder, but we don't care about the customer. Okay, now we got a new problem. Okay, so that was an issue. And then I was working with the IRS, not in Washington, another state, and the IRS says, our customers hate us. We audit them. They don't want to see us. Well, they probably have expectations, though, about how that audit will go. Don't you want to know what those are? I'm sure nobody wants to be audited for 6 months. It's already painful. Let's try to make it less painful. Right? So that's what we're trying to do when we identify stakeholders. So once you identify your customers and your stakeholders, you identify their requirements. And this example shows you a very good example of, this is basically a park process, open parks. So that's the process at the top. And we have our customers in the middle, patrons, park patrons, sports field users. They care about safety. They want it to be clean. They want it to be correctly set up, the park. And stakeholders, look at what they care about. Park numbers, revenue, reputation. They want it to be comparable to other cities. So these are some of the things we have to think about. Who are we serving for the process? We have to serve both. And if you have clear understanding of what they want, you can do that. You're better able to do that. So then when you've done that work, now you can do a dashboard. A dashboard, what is that? A dashboard simply is, they get it actually from the car. Right? So think about a car dashboard. On the dashboard are your critical measures. If you do not watch these measures, you may not make it to your destination. Right? You're going to run out of gas. Your engine's going to break down because it's too hot. You don't have oil. Or somebody's going to come visit you or pull you over and give you a ticket. So all these things are important measures. They're on a dashboard, and that's the whole point about a dashboard is, what are the critical things you should be watching for this core process? Not everything, just the key things. That's what you really want to focus on. It's kind of like your doctor. They've got a dashboard, it's just not up on the wall. What do they measure when you come in? Blood pressure, your temperature. Did you know this was to measure oxygen? They put something on your little hand that says oxygen? I didn't know. So they've got like their 4 measures that tells you your weight. That's a fun one. Let me take off my shoes and my pants. No. Okay. So, yeah, it's always 15 pounds heavier. So these are your dashboard measures. These are the key measures that doctors have to assess health. That's what we want. We don't want everything, just the critical things. So build your dashboards after you design your processes. And then finally, this is the last piece, This brings it down to the individual, daily management of processes. So these boards are used with teams every day. Daily management. What's going on? How are we fixing these? What are some of the issues that have come up? So you've got your scorecard, your dashboards by process, and then you've got your daily management boards. They're different measures. They're not the same. Different measures. These measures on here help employees see what's happening in the process. Dashboards sometimes are outputs after it's happened. But this board typically has things to help people working the process understand what's going on in the process. So here's the tier. It's tiered metrics, and they are different. But the scorecard, dashboards, daily management boards, that's how you cascade it down to the organization. So how are we doing? Once you got those measures set up and those metrics, now you can figure out what's going on and if you're actually achieving your goals. And here's a couple of things. Obviously, you want to have a process for reviewing these. What happens if you don't use the boards? They become fancy wallpaper. Right? Nobody's using them. So how do we make sure we put a process in place to review the dashboards, the scorecards? And even if you have to put it on that 18-month timeline, the roadmap, go ahead. But this process will be important. It's pretty obvious when people stop using the boards. You go in, you see people aren't using them. So guess what? How do we make sure that people are using them? Why are they not using them? We've got to figure out that problem, right? Root cause. We do root cause on lean. Okay, so once you review the boards and you're doing all this review with the three levels of metrics, now you're going to figure out, you're going to have some opportunities. How are you going to decide where to focus your efforts and allocate resources? You can't fix everything all at once. So this is really about organizing to mobilize, right? So prioritize opportunities, a couple of filtering tools if you feel like you can't solve them all right away. Hopefully these go down over time. And how do you allocate the proper resources? So again, first we say, well, what issues or opportunities align with strategic intent, right? So again, what's the focus? How do we get a clear focus on what to improve? Because you can have hundreds of opportunities. So this is the first big filter. What aligns with strategic intent? Then you can start to use some of those prioritization tools. But there's lots of different kinds of projects, as you guys know, and efforts really. There's revolutionary efforts, which we call the breakthrough multi-year effort. There's evolutionary efforts, which we say are like cross-functional or departmental. And then we have the incremental, which are the day-to-day, everyday opportunities. So there's different activity levels in an organization. There are the daily work. This is how we think. And then there are things that you have to mobilize larger groups of people around. So there are different levels of processes and efforts going on in the organization. There's matrices to help you. This is what we call an impact effort matrix. So sometimes if you just want to say, well, what's going to give us the biggest impact? And with the least amount of effort, you can plot some opportunities on here if you want. Obviously you want stuff that's high impact, low effort. So the top right-hand box. And here's your criteria matrix. This shows you if you have more than one criteria, how you might go about that. So this is multiple criteria on the left, and then you can assess the opportunities with that criteria. So it's a little more rigorous. I don't recommend doing this for more than, like, say, 8 projects, because that could take a long time. 6, what actions do we take to improve our ability to achieve our desired outcomes? So this is when we get into the continuous improvement stuff. Finally, we get to use the tools. I get to use my hammer, right? So people say, well, what's Lean and what's Six Sigma? It's process improvement. And process improvement is any time you spend working on the process versus working in the process. You gotta spend time working on the process. And that's what these daily management boards help you do. They get the thinking every day on how do we work on the process every day. I talk to some people and they say, we haven't worked on this process in 3 years. We haven't implemented anything new. And it's painful. We're not really even sure how to do it. And that is reality. Sometimes we just don't have the time. We don't know how to go about doing it. So a few guidelines, obviously focus on the process, not the people. Involve the people that do the work. And as leaders, don't solve the problems for your people. Your goal is to build the problem-solving muscle of your people, not solve the problems for them. So you determine the approach, you can just do it. It's a just do it. Oh, that's easy, that's a no-brainer. Just go do that. That's a quick hit. Adidas was our client for a while. We couldn't say just do it. Just get it done. Gemba walks, Kaizen events, debate projects, these are all ways or approaches to implement things. And then, of course, tracking them. And finally, the one you've all been waiting for, I know. How do we sustain the improvements and ensure that our efforts are making an impact? This is the last of the 6 questions, and it's always the hardest, just like when you go on a diet, right? What happens when you lose all that weight and you look fabulous? You gain it all back. Okay, unless you have a sustainment plan, right? You guys ever heard that? It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. That's a sustainment plan. They're trying to get you to think about stuff you can do forever. You can't live off of Tic Tacs forever, or lemon water and chili pepper. That's not sustainable. All right, so what can you do forever? That is sustainable. Okay, so we've seen this before. You make all this effort and then it's not sustained. So here is the secret. It's the 3-legged stool of sustainability. In order for you to sustain a lean culture, you've got to do all 3 of these things. You got to have lean or standard work. You have to look at process performance, and you have to look at process adherence. It's the 3-legged stool. And a lot of times, you guys hear sometimes maybe, well, the leadership, they're on board. They're really on board. And the front line, they're really on board. But the middle, they're kind of frozen. They don't really know what to do. They don't really have anything for them to do. What do? This is what they do. This is what they do. So the frozen middle is really the ones that are adhering to this. They're ensuring that all these things are happening, and they're using these tools to make sure that we sustain the improvements. Let's talk about these briefly. So here's your process performance. We just went through that. So that's scorecards, dashboards, and visual management. Use them, right? Have a process to use them, have a process to review them. Put it on the calendar for the whole year for the dashboards, and put it on the calendar for the scorecard, and daily you should be using the management boards. Process adherence. So this is the toughest one. This is the one we see the least happen. This one doesn't happen as much. And this is when we walk around, we have to say, first of all, does the process exist? Are employees adhering to the process? And is the process sufficient in meeting customer needs? These are the 3 things we have to look for. When I think of process adherence, I think of my 10-year-old. I'm trying to get him to clean his room. So I have to define what clean means. We gotta take a picture of it, create some standard work around cleaning the room. Process improvement does work on kids. Try it. We can share stories. Okay, so we have to know that the process exists first. And then once we fix the process and the people are involved in the process, we have to make sure they're adhering to it. Because if you don't pay attention to it, they won't either. Right? I'm not going to pay attention to this if my boss doesn't pay attention to it. Why am I going to do that? That's just a waste of time. I'm going to focus on the stuff that they're thinking about and they're paying attention to. So process adherence shows that you care. It shows that you are looking to see if it's being followed, and you're asking them questions about it. So we sort of expect as leaders that people would adhere to the process. We kind of expect it. Okay, it's done. Make sure it sticks. We walk away. It doesn't. You gotta check on it. Ask them about it, those kinds of things. People will pay attention to it if you do. So these are different tools on how to manage that. Managing at a glance, using visual management tools so you're not interrogating them. You can see it. You can see if they're adhering to the process. That's the point about visual management. Anybody can take a look at it and they can know if the process is working or not. That's what visual management does. So how do we do that? Use visual management to see process abnormalities. When is the process abnormal, and how do you make sure it's visible? Because you know, if somebody has to beg for help, they're not going to do it, right? How do you make it easy to say somebody needs help? So leadership behaviors, the standard work. So this is something that you're also doing for sustainability. So commit in defending your organizational values. That's really an important piece. We talked about that a lot. As leaders, we've got to do that. And integrating those practices, the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. This is a leadership model. It's 5 areas. 30 years of research shows that the more leaders engage in these practices, the higher engagement of their employees. So the 5 practices are model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. These are directly correlated to employee engagement. We had a whole class on that. So, and then these are some of the tools. Scorecards, dashboards, reflection meetings. You guys, there's a lot of words and names for that too. Reflection meetings, stand-up meetings, huddles. These are all the same. These are things that we're doing to really build that problem-solving muscle. And again, who owns the 3-legged stool of stability, of sustainability? Leaders. Leaders own it. So if I, sometimes I hear people say, oh yeah, our people, they didn't stick with it. Leaders own sustainability. So that is enterprise alignment. The 1 dimension. We're going to have the next 3 dimensions next year, I think. Right, Daryl? So this is ultimately what we're trying to do. We are trying to get alignment. And this is a great example of it because it's rowing crews in a river race. All these athletes are strongly and highly motivated. The key to their success is that they row in unison. Each of these rowers are highly conditioned and trained, but if they have their own independent tactics or ideas about success, they are not going to be successful. They'll be disastrous. So all the rowers have to be aligned and work together, like different parts of an organization. So those are the 6 critical questions. And here's a visual of our map that we do that will be available on the website. And here's the roadmap. So everything we talked about is really just this one row for enterprise alignment. So before you go, I want to share some tribal knowledge with you. You guys have tribal knowledge in your organization? Sometimes that's not such a good thing, but there is good tribal knowledge out there. And we are a tribe, aren't we? Aren't we a tribe? We're all in the lean tribe. Woohoo! So I have some real, authentic tribal knowledge to share with you before I let you out of here. It's from an old Cherokee Indian. And I want to share it with you because that's what tribes do to stay alive. We share stories. So one evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle inside us is between 2 wolves. One wolf is evil, the other wolf is good. The evil wolf is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, guilt, superiority, and ego. The good wolf is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, benevolence, truth, and compassion." The grandson thought about it for a minute and asked his grandfather, "Well, which wolf's going to win?" And the old Cherokee said, "The one you feed." So if you reflect on this and you think about your lean journey that lies ahead, be mindful of which wolf is being fed, by you or others. Don't feed the big bad wolf. Oh, that's another story. Feed the good wolf. And here's a quote that I stole from Amy Basil from the Department of Social and Health Services. She's sitting right there. She was in one of our leadership sessions once. You can start feeding the good wolf by saying this. Don't say I can't because. Say I could if. Thank you.